Kathy Dahlkemper, Erie County Executive, your county is one of the few in Western Pennsylvania that did not get the green light from Governor Wolf for reopening. What's your reaction?
Very, very disappointed. I think here in Erie County, we've done an excellent job since our first case of COVID-19, contact tracing every single case we've had. We've had a strong enforcement through our environmental team out there helping our businesses do the right thing, follow all the guidelines. And we know that our numbers have gone up since we reached yellow. In many ways, I think that's because we did so well when we were in red. That we had so little numbers, but with only 5 deaths and 6 deaths, I guess. We have a question mark about one of those deaths, but anyway, and with our economic issues, and then every other county around us, including Ashtabula and Chautauqua County in New York and Ohio, much more open than us, it makes no sense to me. And it happened on the same day that the state basically opened up our Presque Isle beaches. So what is Northwest Pennsylvania's kind of summer playground is open to everyone and they can come here, but we're still sitting at yellow. That makes no sense to me.
What is the reason state government gave you for not allowing Erie County to open up as it did with adjacent communities?
Well, again, because our numbers have gone up and they're looking at a 14-day total in terms of the cases per 100,000. Mm-hmm. But again, they were using metrics by Carnegie Mellon, and if you look at those metrics, we should be open. Our metrics are actually very good, but now it looks like they're using different metrics, and that to me is frustrating. That it feels like in some ways we're changing the goal line in the middle, and we're doing great work up here, and believe me, our businesses are doing phenomenal, and I actually think it's safer if people would go to work because they would wear their masks, they would social distance at work, and people aren't doing that as well as maybe they should be when they're out and about. And so I think actually it's safer to put people to work than to let them still stay home.
Well, you have gone on the record saying that decision-making metrics used by the Pennsylvania Health Department are traditional disease measuring metrics. So what are they missing that you think they should include?
I think the other data sets need to be looked at. What is the mental health toll on the community? What is the economic toll on the community? We have to look at this holistically. We obviously need to look at the COVID-19 numbers, and we need to make sure that we have in place all of the supports to continue to try to mitigate the spread of that disease. But we know COVID-19 is going to be with us for at least 12 months, if not 18 months or more. How do we live with COVID-19 and still have an economy that functions and people that can actually go and do normal things like go to work? And so the state, in my opinion, needs to look holistically, and they really should ask and get the opinions and have conversations with the elected leaders from that community before the decision is made.
So you said restrictions on people are taking a mental health toll, and you also said before a physical toll as well. And talk about that. Are you talking about that people just can't go out to gyms like they used to?
Yeah, not only that, I think much of it is really just people not being able to see their family members, not be able to, socialize with people as well as they can. And so we continue to try to give them guidance around that. But I think much of it is simply the economy and not being able to go to work and pay their bills and put food on their table and those kind of basic things that we all need to do. There are many people struggling with that in Erie County, and the only way that's going to change is if they get back to work.
In a recent interview, you'd said that being in the yellow phase forces residents to go elsewhere for services. Can you give me some examples?
I know for sure that people are going to Crawford County, Warren County, Ashtabula County, and Chautauqua County to get their hair cut, to go and sit in a restaurant, to do the things that you can do once you go to green. We are surrounded by all those counties, and so 2 states and other counties in Pennsylvania that are all much more open than we are. And I also know that many, many people are coming to Erie County from other counties because, again, we are a place that people come to vacation in the summertime. I was down on our bayfront last night. I could not believe the number of cars I saw with out-of-state license plates. They were checking into our hotels on the bayfront. They're coming here to enjoy the beauty of this area. So there's no way for us to control COVID-19 by staying in the yellow when we have so many people coming here now from elsewhere.
You mentioned contact tracing earlier, and I understand that 6 contact tracers are going to be in Erie County for 2 weeks. How's that going to work? How much can they accomplish?
Well, we asked for that a couple weeks ago. If our numbers are going up and you have contact tracers, send us some resources here until we get more of ours lined up. So we have trained 6 of our own. We are training 6 more. We plan on bringing 18 total more contact tracers in Erie County to do the work going forward, but it takes time. So we asked the state, if you have contact tracers up and ready to go, send them to us. My understanding is they're not quite here and doing that work even yet, and so that's a struggle that we're being promised the resources, and they're coming, but they can't come quick enough to help us continue to mitigate the spread.
There was a recent press conference, and your local Representative Bizarro, was there, and he said he's telling businesses to operate as though they were in the green phase, even though the governor hasn't given you the official go-ahead. Do you approve of that kind of advice?
I am not on board with that. I think we have to follow the governor's orders. I mean, I don't think we can, defy that. And I worry about businesses who are licensed by the state, and I think they need to be very careful. We know that there could be insurance implications for them if their insurance company found that they were operating outside of the governor's orders and something happened, that they may not have the insurance coverage that they would expect that they would have. So I don't recommend that, but I understand the representative's frustration, because I have the same frustration. We all believe that we have done well and we have the tools in place to be in the green.
Outdoor dining is permitted in Erie County as of June the 5th. Have you seen other signs that seem encouraging about any kind of return to normalcy?
Right. Again, when I was down on the Bayfront last night, lots of our restaurants had their outside dining going, and tables spaced apart, and people, enjoying being out along the Bayfront, and they'll continue to do that. So that's a good thing. That makes people, I think, feel a little bit better, a little more normal. But yeah, we need to see more of that.
How well are employers coping with wearing masks and maintaining social distancing? Have you seen good evidence of that?
We have excellent cooperation from our businesses here. I would have to say that I would put Erie County up against any other county in Pennsylvania in terms of the compliance of our businesses. And one thing that we did that I don't know that any other county did is we had this very, very strong enforcement team from day one. And they have been out there educating our businesses, being their partners, not trying to be punitive. But we have one business right now that that they have been refusing to wear masks and refusing to require people to wear masks. And we've sent them a registered letter telling them they are in violation. And they would be in violation under the green zone too. And we may be taking legal action against this business if they do not change their habits. So if we did that, we might be one of the first in the state to do that. But again, we take this very seriously, and we will take the green guidelines very seriously, and we will do our part to enforce, the governor's orders.
When is Erie projected to go into the green zone? Is there any way to know?
There's no way to know. I wish we did know. The state has not revealed that to us, but I'm really hopeful that this week, when it seems like they make their announcements on Friday, and I'm very hopeful that, this Friday, the governor and the Secretary of Health will see that, we are doing everything we can in Erie County, and it doesn't make any sense to keep us yellow. We're up here in a sea of green, and we need to be green also.
Kathy Dahlkemper, Erie County Executive, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Larry. Good to be with you.
The eyes of the nation are on Pennsylvania as a key influencer to the 2020 election. PCN has over 25 years of trusted state government coverage. Our network is your platform to connect directly with Pennsylvania voters. Whether it's a presidential race, statewide campaign, or local cause, our viewers are ready to hear from you. Book your ad now. PCN, your access to Pennsylvania voters.
Diane Barber, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Child Care Association, take a minute and tell us about your membership.
Well, Larry, thank you for having me today. The Pennsylvania Child Care Association is a statewide membership organization made up of those programs and individuals that actually provide childcare. In addition, we have members who support the industry. We have about 2,300 active members out of the 7,000 regulated childcare providers in Pennsylvania. We also sponsor the Teach Early Childhood Scholarship Program, which provides scholarships for early childhood educators to achieve degrees and credentials.
Diane, half of Pennsylvania is in the green phase, half of it approximately is in the yellow phase. What does that mean for child care centers being open or closed?
It's an interesting challenge. So while those programs operating in the yellow are allowed to open and those that are operating in the green are obviously allowed to open, the challenge has been whether they can open. And why they may be struggling with that decision. One of the big things, Pennsylvania has some of the strongest health and safety regulations in the country, but COVID-19 has increased their need to clean and keep things sanitized and germ-free, for lack of a better word. The challenge has been to find the supplies in order to do that. So we know of some programs that assign staff just to kind of do a scavenger hunt on cleaning supplies. So that's a challenge. The other challenge is that some programs, actually many programs, laid their staff off during this period of time. And now we have to call them back. The other challenge is for our families about whether or not they feel comfortable putting their children back in congregate care, even though they're now thinking about returning to work. So these are some of the challenges that programs, are facing at this point.
Now, approximately 1,500 child care centers a while ago were allowed to reopen with waivers. Talk about that.
So during the red phase, all family, residential childcare, family and group, we have different kinds here in Pennsylvania, were allowed to remain open. And that was about 1,100 chose to do that. Our center-based programs, those operating outside of homes, had to apply for a waiver. And they did that so that they could serve children of families with essential services. Now, there was a struggle, for families to find appropriate care, because 700 out of 7,000 center-based programs, even the 1,200, that's a significant decline in the availability of care. Then those programs operating under the waiver had to implement procedures and policies that were much more strict than what they currently operated on, even though their health and safety policies are very good. So, what was terrific, according to OCDEL, the Office of Child Development and Early Learning, is that we had fewer than 10 cases of COVID, both either in staff or in children, in those 1,200 programs who were operating under the waiver. So what that said is that the procedures worked, because these were families that were already on the front lines of fighting COVID. So I think that it demonstrates that we've put a good system in place to keep children and adults safe.
A minute ago, Diane, you talked about the reopening allowing for calling back some staff, but are there some staff who don't want to come back to work for any reason?
Well, just to let you know, I've been doing this for a really long time. So 1989 is when I first got into the field. And prior to COVID, we were suffering probably the worst staffing crisis that I've ever experienced. So finding staff to work in our programs, even in kind of normal times, was a challenge. So now our staff have been laid off. Fortunately, the unemployment system has been has provided enough support that they are able to continue their lives. But on the downside, unfortunately, they may be making more on unemployment than they were working in their programs. Mm-hmm. The other challenge about calling staff back is our programs are not operating at full enrollment. And so we may not have enough positions for them to come back to. In addition, our workforce has a tendency to be older, either really young or kind of older. And so with that comes some health concerns that we have to be aware of, because we already know that COVID, those that are older with underlying health conditions can be at risk. And when we talk about, while we're excited about that, only 10 individuals, caught COVID during the red phase, we're now opening that up to a larger community. And, children, as much as we love them, may not demonstrate the same symptoms that we might see in adults. And so they could be the passers of COVID. So that's a concern for especially some of our older staff about coming back. So we've got a combination of, they're making more on unemployment. Will I be safe if I come back to my program? And then do we have enough, do we need as many staff? And then an overall staffing crisis that kind of is on top of all of those things.
Because after all, there are going to be fewer children permitted in these spaces, right? And that's got to be part of the problem.
Well, actually, that's a misconception. There is no, while the governor has put out some guidelines for other businesses, that talked about 50% capacity under the yellow, 75% under the green. Those numbers don't apply to childcare, because childcare already works under a very stringent regulatory package. We have our own staff to child ratios and group sizes, but in reality, our programs are probably operating at 50% or fewer capacity, not by recommendations, but just kind of in practicality. So our childcare programs operate under the guidelines set by the CDC, and that is the guidance that was adopted by the Office of Child Development and Early Learning.
So it sounds like there was already some degree of social distancing in childcare long before the pandemic.
Yes. So for example, just to give you an example, so for our preschoolers in our childcare centers, our regular staff to child ratio is 1 to 10. For infants, it's 1 to 4. So we already have very stringent staff to child ratios, which is one of the reasons why childcare is so expensive. We're not going there in this interview, but it is a very staff. The staffing is probably the most expensive piece out of childcare. That's the
Diane, give me some more insight into life at a child care center and life for the staff. Now, a while ago, you indicated that it's a challenge just to get hold of cleaning supplies, let alone do anything else.
Yes. So people, whether it's staff or whether it's families coming back into returning to childcare, it's going to be different. Our new normal includes significant screening before anybody enters the door. So it's going to take longer for families to actually drop their child off, because one of the things that we're doing regularly is taking people's temperatures and making sure that that before they enter the program, they have that single symptom is an indicator of COVID. Now, and so then during the day, we have multiple times where we're washing hands, we're wiping down tables, we're wiping down playground equipment. So while they did that regularly before, they're doing it more so now. Childcare staff also always checked children's health before they came into the program. So they always, asked them how they felt, if they looked feverish, they would take temperatures, but this is kind of preemptive now. So we're doing it before we walk in the door. So that's some of the differences. The other differences is that the CDC guidance also suggests that children are kept in the same group with the same adult throughout the day. And in that way, we can keep any exposure within that group. Although even now, we're still working. Now that we're, I don't know, what are we, 3, 4? Well, the whole state is now, pretty much the whole state is now open. The most recent numbers that we had from Octal is 18 individuals with both children and adults that have been diagnosed with COVID. So given, that's only an increase of 8 over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and we're catching it, we know that. these are good signs. These are good signs.
Diane, that sounds like a good start to keep kids together in the same groups. However, it must be tough to get kids to behave in a way that just might not seem natural to them. They like to be around each other.
It's, boy, this is just like so against child development, right? Like, how do you control, a group of six toddlers that want to run and touch and like push and just do kinds of things, and that don't understand when you tell them, play over here with this set of blocks that we can wash, or stay over here and try not to do this. And even with our preschoolers that have a better cognitive ability to understand what's going on, it's about running around and playing and pushing and doing some really good things. So what we try to do is we do the best that we can, and that's all we can do, and understand that this is part of development, and we do the best that we can. So.
Given the COVID situation, is it possible that some child care centers won't ever be able to reopen?
Yes. You've probably read this or heard this. Child care programs operate on very thin margins. You're not going into the child care business to make a lot of money. Even those child care centers that are traded on the stock exchange aren't making tons of money. So this is a business that's expensive to run, and if you are without income for any period of time, it's expensive to sustain. It is driven by fees, whether those are fees paid by the government or their parent fees. And there are some sources for outside funding, but still, if you're not bringing in funding, then you still have a rent to pay, you still have your insurance to pay, you still have electricity and water and things like that. So they don't have huge savings accounts. We knew of programs back during the extensive budget impasse that some owners that tap their retirement funds. Now, I haven't heard those stories recently, but I have heard of at least 16 programs that have closed in the last couple of weeks.
Last question, Diane.
Sure.
Any advice for parents who might need some reassurance about sending their kids back to child care centers at the tail end of this pandemic, if that's indeed what it is?
I think, like I said, Pennsylvania has some of the strongest health and safety regulations in the country. I personally feel confident that our child care providers are very cognizant of the health and safety that they have to provide in their programs. I talk to them, every day. If parents have any concern, they need to talk to their child care director. It will be different. But any concerns, really, they should talk to the director of their program and express their feelings and needs. One of the things they're not going to be able to do is they're not going to be able to escort their child to their classroom anymore. It's going to take a little bit more to talk to their child's teacher, because that child's teacher is going to be in the classroom with the other children. But keep the lines of communication open. I think everybody wants to make this work, and we can't go back to work if we don't have childcare. So, yeah, that's where we are. I hope that helps.
Diane Barber, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Child Care Association. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larry.
PCN is working to help keep Pennsylvanians informed as restrictions are lifted across the state. Join us daily for Coronavirus Impact, a discussion with civic, business, and government leaders on COVID-19's impact on life during and after the pandemic in PA. Stay with PCN as we provide Pennsylvanians with live, up-to-the-minute information from the Governor and Department of Health's coronavirus response. Watch PCN on cable and stream free on the PCN app.
Senator Jake Corman, Majority Leader, the outbreak of COVID-19 disrupted the usual business of the budget. How did your chamber deal with that?
Well, the best we could. We basically extended the 1920 budget into 2021. There's so many unknowns, and budgets, about predictability the best you can. And you have to predict revenues that come in for the next fiscal year. You have to predict expenditures that go out. And it was very difficult under this climate to make those predictions with any sort of certainty, with any sort of expertise. A lot of unknown what's going on in Washington, D.C. and how they may be helping the states, not helping the states. And so what we did is basically freeze all spending at the last year's levels, and did a 5-month budget so that we can get a better understanding and clearer, hopefully by fall, so we can come back and finish the budget. But it was important to do certain things like education for school districts to give them predictability, and other areas so that, whether human services, things of that nature, debt service, financial things of that nature, that we did for a full year. But most of it we just held at 5 months, last year's levels, give everyone some sense of what's going on, but allow us time to get a clearer picture when these shutdowns are going to end, how the economy is going to rebound, so that we can make a more educated decision in the fall. And so I think we did what was the appropriate thing at the time. It's certainly unconventional, but it's an unconventional year. And I think it was the best approach for what we're facing.
You said there were a lot of unknowns while you were working on this budget. So let's back up to the knowns then. As far as the COVID virus outbreak is concerned, what were the knowns and what you had to address right away?
Well, unfortunately, one of the knowns was revenue loss in the state budget. The amount of money we predicted would come in 1920, anywhere near. We still have a couple, we still have to the end of June, but we're going to be well short of that cost that that this virus caused us. And fortunately, we did get some federal money already, and we appropriated some of those dollars with the budget to get to counties, to get to local communities to help offset those costs. So those are some of the things that that are obviously out there in front of us that we need to deal with, and we did. Getting money to nursing homes. Obviously, this COVID-19 had a tremendous negative impact on our nursing homes, and the state reaction to that was not where it should have been. And so, hopefully, those resources that we just put into place to our nursing homes will allow them to be prepared if we have a fall, a surge, which some people are predicting. We certainly don't want to have a repeat of the disaster that happened in our nursing homes. So those were some of the known things that we tried to deal with right away.
And the virus showed us that food security was an issue in some parts of Pennsylvania. So how was this addressed in any recovery funds in your 5-month budget?
Yeah, obviously food security or food services and plants were listed as essential services, but I don't know that they did a tremendous job because a lot of them are sort of, manufacturing facilities that don't necessarily do a great job at social distancing. So we saw some outbreak in some of those particular facilities. So getting them resources, getting them what they need so their employees can operate was an important part. We have small business grants that we put out there to help those individuals with their employees that were so important. So that's something that was obviously essential.
A lot of Pennsylvanians have had anxiety about paying their mortgage and their rent. Is there rent assistance in your 5-month budget too?
Yeah, what we did on a lot of these things was allow time, whether it was our taxes. We hear what the federal government did. Normally our taxes were due April 15th. We pushed it off 90 days to July 5th. We extended the grace period for local municipalities. Right now when you get your property taxes, you get a penalty phase. First, you get a phase where you get a break. We paid early, and then there's a penalty phase you pay late. We extended that early phase so that people would have time to be able to get back to work, to get their unemployment comp, because the unemployment comp was very difficult to get through. Labor and industry was inundated, and they didn't do a particularly great job of dealing with all the cases we got. And so, same thing with the governor did executive order on rent rebate and no foreclosures. So again, trying to allow time for people to get back to normalcy, to get back to a point where they're getting back to work, they're getting revenue coming in, or they're getting their unemployment checks, benefits, whatever. Allow time so people didn't get into problems because of the lack of revenue in their own home.
I understand the total amount of money in your 5-month budget is about $26 billion. And about how much of that $26 billion is going to COVID-19 recovery?
Well, a lot of it, again, the budget itself was just an extension of last year. A lot of the money that we got from the federal government was where we put a lot of the COVID-19 sort of reaction. And and we have about $4 billion there to spend. We actually had five. The first billion went out to some of the larger counties, and then some to the school districts. But we allocated a good bit of it. We still have about $1 billion left to allocate to appropriate over the next few weeks, months. But ultimately, the state share to go towards about $5 billion. Now, other areas like the hospitals got money directly from the federal government. There was an extension of money as well. So, the revenue's been pretty good coming from Washington, D.C. already, and they're talking about something that's more. And so we've been able to use those dollars to go directly to COVID-19.
What about Pennsylvania schools? Are they going to be needing help for all the cleaning they're going to have to do? And there's a cost in buying cleaning supplies like never before.
Yeah, and the money that we sent schools, we allowed that to be a one of the costs they contribute towards COVID-19. The federal government hasn't really let us do revenue replacement yet. You got to spend the money on things that are COVID-19 related costs. And as you mentioned, particularly for schools, they want to sanitize the schools, and so some of the money we sent that we allowed them to use that as one of the things they can do if they so choose. We put that in school safety grants that they can get, and that was one of the areas they can apply it to.
Now, lots of individuals, of course, were put out of work by the virus. Is there any investment in the budget that might help speed up unemployment claims?
Well, we certainly are open to labor and industry. They were inundated with claims. They didn't do a particularly great job preparing for it. So we've tried to get them up to speed. I think they now are up to speed and they're dealing with the claims. Whatever resources labor and industry needs, we're certainly going to give them. But they haven't asked for any new dollars at this point in time. I think they now have it under control. Certainly, there was a lot of backlog early. They went from a couple 100,000 claims to about 2 million, which they weren't unfortunately prepared for. I think they're now in a better spot and should be processing claims at a much better rate.
How much help is in the budget for Pennsylvania's farmers, especially dairy farmers who had a very tough time in the early going?
Yeah, all the ag lines are there, and we're funded. Ag research was funded again. We did a lot of agriculture bills last year to put a lot of new resources into ag. The Ag Dairy Commission came out with recommendations for us, which we're processing through now. Again, an area that was essential, had to continue to operate, but a lot of their markets were closed. You saw a lot of dumping of milk throughout Pennsylvania, and so again, they're able to get through this CARES Act, the small business loans, small business grants, and hopefully that'll offset some of their issues. They got major challenges, and that's one of the things as we get a better sense of where we are in our budget. As we come back to finish the budget, we can apply more dollars to that.
Is there anything in the state budget that could accelerate the development of a vaccine? Is Pennsylvania doing its part?
Well, again, the federal CARES dollars, we're able to apply dollars towards our medical centers and our hospitals. And Pennsylvania has tremendous research facilities. We have research dollars that go out to places like UPMC and Penn State University, who are some of our leading medical research institutions. And we're hoping. Obviously, we'd like to see someone great that was developed here in Pennsylvania, but we're trying to support them as best we possibly can.
Senator, we're going to go full circle with our interview here. At the beginning, you talked about the unknowns your chamber had to deal with in putting the budget together. So at this point, and thinking that in the near future there'll be a budget part 2, what remains to be known? What kind of news do you think is going to come in? What are you anticipating?
Well, I think the biggest issue will be what the federal government's going to do. You saw a bill that passed the House that had a lot of state revenue dollars. The Senate said not going to be as generous with those dollars, which is understandable. At some point in time, they're spending their own money that they're going to have to pay back at some point in time. And they've already sent trillions to the states. So $3 trillion more, which I think the House bill, I think seems to be a lot. So they got to negotiate that out. That's the biggest sort of unknown, is what kind of dollars will come to the state to help plug our hole. What we're hoping is as we continue to move out of this shutdown, that our revenues will bounce back quickly. Unlike 2008, when the government sent us stimulus dollars to get us through a tough time, it took 7-8 years for our revenues to bounce back because of the recession that we were in, and it just didn't bounce back. Our economy was thriving before this happened. So we're certainly hopeful that our economy will bounce back quickly. We don't know that yet, and that's, again, another one of the unknowns. How quickly will our economy bounce back? When will people go back to work? And how are people's spending habits, tourism, things of that nature going to rebound? And if they rebound quickly, then the federal dollars can plug the hole that we have, and then we can come out next year and be in a good spot. If we don't get any federal dollars, then we're looking at a massive hole that we're going to have to fill either through increases in revenue or decreases in expenditures. I don't suspect that will happen, at least for when we finish the budget. But how we are next June, after the federal dollars go away, is going to determine how quickly we bounce back. And so those are some of the unknowns that we're waiting to see. This shutdown has had a tremendous economic damage, has done tremendous economic damage to the Commonwealth, to the individuals, to businesses. And so the quicker we can get out of this and move on with some normalcy, the better economic position we'll be in, both our own state budget, but also businesses and individual families' budgets as well.
Last question, Senator. Is it safe to assume that there will be more money for COVID-19 recovery in the second part of the state budget?
Yeah, again, we still have $1 billion to allocate the last CARES package that we got from the federal government. Clearly, as we put a final spending package together, trying to prepare ourselves for the future, as we were probably unprepared for this one, will be something that we'll be all working through, both at state level, our local communities, our local school districts. All will try to have some dollars there to better prepare for.
All right, Senator Jake Corman, Majority Leader, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
People from Hagerstown, well south of here along the mountain range, were coming into Gettysburg and saying that the Confederates were moving north, and that if they chose to come over the mountains, that their harvests were in danger.
Gettysburg Battle Walks are guided tours of the historic battlefield, led by the experts who can tell you what happened. Each battle walk lets you walk in the shoes of the men who fought and died here.
Gettysburg Battle Walks, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, only on PCN.
Joined by the president and the CEO of Special Olympics of Pennsylvania, Matt Aaron. And this weekend, June 12th through the 14th, was to be the Summer Games for Special Olympics of Pennsylvania. And it was supposed to be taking place, as it does every year, at the campus of Penn State University. Obviously, with COVID-19, that and everything else has been forced to be postponed. But it didn't stop the organization that Matt Aaron is the head of. The Special Olympics of Pennsylvania has opted instead, Matt, to go to a virtual game. So give us a little bit of idea of the idea, where that genesis of the idea came from, and what the virtual games are all about.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be with you today. The idea for virtual summer games we actually stole from another state, which is the sincerest form of flattery.
Let's go with borrowed.
We borrowed. Well, we adapted and we improved, we'd like to say.
That's better. That's even better.
So a couple of other states are doing virtual games. Minnesota, Kentucky are a couple examples that we looked at. And really now all over the country, I think Special Olympics programs are picking it up. As I'm sure you can imagine, as everybody knows, we were really disappointed when we had to cancel the games this year. We have a wonderful, more than 30-year partnership with Penn State. We get great support from the state itself to do our summer games. It's something our athletes look forward to every single year. So this is our biggest event, and so canceling it was certainly not something we did lightly, and we're certainly disappointed about. But we also then quickly realized, knowing that there was no way to safely do the games this year, we realized we have to give our athletes an opportunity. We have to do something and provide an opportunity for them. And so that's really what sparked the thought of doing a virtual summer game. So we're going to try to have as many of the elements of our normal summer games in the virtual summer games as we can. So we'll start on Friday with an opening ceremonies. We'll have a victory dance at the end of the games. A victory dance is actually one of the things that our athletes look forward to as much, or in some cases more than the competition. We'll have some competition events. They'll look different this year than our normal sports, but we'll have sports included. We'll have an Olympic Village. We'll have closing ceremonies. So for the athletes and the volunteers who typically come to Penn State, they'll see and feel things that look very familiar, and that's part of what we wanted to do. But we also wanted to use this opportunity to take lemons and make some lemonade. And we realized that there are some athletes in Special Olympics Pennsylvania who never get that chance to come to Penn State. We serve 20,000 athletes all over the state, and each year we have about 2,000 who can come to Penn State. And so we saw the virtual summer games as a way to reach athletes who maybe wouldn't typically get that chance. And so we've asked our coaches to reach out not to just the athletes who might normally come, but to all of our athletes. And so that's actually a really exciting opportunity for us to bring sports to and summer games to a group of athletes who maybe otherwise wouldn't get it.
That's really an interesting aspect of it. And it's great on your part to be able to do exactly what you're talking about, to try to figure out a way to make it into a positive. And with what the summer games normally consist of, it's usually 8 different sports, and you have different events within each sport. Now, from the Special Olympics athlete standpoint, can they essentially participate in whatever sport they feel as if they can compete in to the best of their abilities?
They can. That's a great question, Bob. And that's something that's new and different that we hope is exciting for our athletes. So typically, Special Olympics summer games are a culminating competition. Many people in the general public don't realize or don't think that Special Olympics is a competitive sports organization, but we are. So the athletes who come to summer games are there because they've trained and competed locally. They've advanced to what we call a sectional competition, but that's a regional competition, and then advanced from that to the state games at Penn State. So normally an athlete trains and competes in a single sport, and they come to Penn State, and that's what they compete in. For the virtual summer games, we decided, since we can't really do competition in the virtual challenges that we've set up, and we can talk a little bit more about that, they can't compete in those challenges per se, but it's a great opportunity for athletes to try out a new sport. And so we've set up a variety of challenges, and we've allowed athletes to participate in any challenge they want in any sport that they want. So they could actually do, multiple different sports if they want for the virtual games.
So from the athlete standpoint, the coach's standpoint, give us a little bit of the details of what happens. They are essentially filming themselves competing in the sport and then submitting that video to your organization.
That's right. So an athlete will choose one of 22 different challenge activities spanning those 8 different sports that we usually have at summer games. And they will perform that activity. They'll hopefully practice some in advance, hone their skills, and then have a coach or a family member, whoever's in their household, who can safely do it, film them doing their activity, and they'll submit their scores online. And we're actually asking each athlete to do 3 of those challenge activities, but they can be in any different sport. So they could actually do 3 challenges in 3 different sports if they want to upload their scores. And then this weekend during the virtual summer games, we'll be showing some of those videos and announcing scores and really just celebrating all the athletes who participate in the virtual games.
Now, you mentioned some of the activities that you normally have, and you're still going to have some form of them on the virtual games, the opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies. And I also understand that with those videos, you've also been able to incorporate some celebrity play-by-play announcers to get involved in it and do some of the calls for some of the athletes.
We do. We've got just amazing support. On the celebrity announcer side, we've got Steve Jones from Penn State, who's always with us every year up at Penn State. So it's great to have a familiar voice and friend part of the games with us. But we've got NBC Sports Philadelphia involved. We've got CBS 3 involved. And then we've also got some celebrities who are going to be part of the virtual games with us. I don't want to steal all of our thunder before the big show this weekend, but we'll have Franco Harris, who is a longtime supporter of Special Olympics Pennsylvania, NFL Hall of Famer. So Franco will be part of the games. We've got a couple of Eagles players who will be involved, and we've got some well wishes from some of our elected officials. We've got wonderful support on both sides of the aisle. So Governor Wolf will be giving a greeting. President Barron from Penn State will be welcoming our athletes. And like I said, we'll have some messages from elected officials on both sides of the aisle saying hello and giving our athletes well wishes for the weekend.
Now, I know, having been at Penn State the weekend of the activities, we're usually there from PCN standpoint for some of the PIAA state championships that are also going on that weekend. But you have a ton of participation at all of your events. But obviously, for your summer games, as you said, it's kind of a culmination of series of regional events that comes to the state Special Olympics at Penn State in this weekend. Normally, you have somewhere in the vicinity, from what I understand from your organization, close to 2,000 athletes at the summer games. So what is your hope, your anticipation of what you might get in terms of participation in the virtual games?
Yeah, we're right now we're trending around 1,000 signed up. So we're pretty pleased that for a first time ever virtual event that we've got 1,000 people signed up, and they're from all over the state, which is wonderful. So Summer Games is a culminating statewide competition. So we now have athletes signed up for the virtual games from all over the state, and we've got some volunteers as well. Volunteers are really the lifeblood of Special Olympics. So for a typical Summer Games, we'll have over 1,000 volunteers participating throughout the weekend. And this year, we wanted to make sure that we included them with these games. So obviously, they're not there, they're not participating, but they've been very active, first of all, in recruiting our athletes for the weekend and helping them get ready for their challenge activities. But we'll also be featuring some videos this weekend from our coaches around the state, because they're a critical part of what we do.
You also must have some very good video editors, because that's a lot of videos that you're going to culminate if you have 1,000 different athletes sending in videos of some kind or another.
We have a wonderful marketing team and an incredible digital media expert. He announced last week, his name is Nick. Nick announced last week that we had close to 1,400 videos that had been submitted already. So I don't think the guy's going to sleep between now and the end of the games, but he does an amazing job, and we've got some really good footage in. So we're really excited about this weekend.
It's great, and you should very well be. So for people around the state of Pennsylvania who are watching this and are interested, how can they get involved in terms of watching the Summer Olympics from Special Olympics of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's great. We hope people will tune in and learn more about what we are and just experience the joy of Special Olympics, because it's going to be a fun weekend. The activities will start Friday afternoon and they'll run through Sunday afternoon. You can find a schedule on our website at specialolympicspa.org. And then this weekend, the way we're actually broadcasting is through our Facebook page. So we'll be live on Facebook, and you can also tune in on our YouTube channel. All you have to do is Google or search for Special Olympics Pennsylvania, and you'll find it. So the schedule will show you the hours when we're broadcasting the various segments like opening and the victory dance. And one of the areas I didn't mention was our healthy athletes. So we're the largest public health provider for people with intellectual disabilities. And we normally conduct healthy athlete screenings throughout the weekend at Penn State. Obviously can't do that this weekend, but we're going to be broadcasting some healthy athlete videos with some health and fitness tips and wellness messages. So,
and I guess the most important thing for your organization in any way is that how can people, if they're interested and they want to get involved, whether it's through donations, whether it's becoming a volunteer with the Special Olympics of Pennsylvania, if they're interested, what is their best source and how to get started?
Thanks, Bob. It's the same way. Folks who would like to donate or volunteer can go to our website at specialolympicspa.org. There's a donate button at the top of the page, and right smack dab in the middle of the home page is a blue volunteer button. So we love volunteers. We have thousands of them, and that's what makes our organization go. So we're always looking for good volunteers, and of course, through tough times like this, the financial support is critical. So thank you for asking that.
Well, Matt, thank you. Thank your organization for doing what is a magnificent job under normal circumstances, and to do it even more so under adverse circumstances. A pat on the back to you and to everyone in the organization. I'm sure you've got a busy couple of days in preparation for it, but I'm sure when it's all said and done, by the time Sunday rolls around, it will have been a very rewarding experience for all of you.
We know it will. Our mission is about joy, and you're going to see that joy on full display this weekend. So we're excited about it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Matt Aaron, the president and CEO of the Special Olympics of Pennsylvania.